In A New Hope, Darth Vader prepares to torture Leia in an effort to find the hidden rebel base, but after we see the mind probe enter Leia's cell, the camera cuts away and we are left to wonder what the Sith Lord actually did to the princess. And in the canon novel Bloodline, we find the answer, as Leia reflects on the time her horrible father utilized barbaric techniques to extract the information he desired. While enjoying a meal with a political adversary whom Leia now recognized as an acquaintance, she shares her memory of that day, saying that Vader tortured her for hours while a couple of his stormtroopers watched. She would keep the truth about her familial ties to Vader to herself, as she had for as long as she'd known that he was her biological father, but that didn't make the story any less intense for Leia or for the friend who was listening. Although Luke had told her with glowing pride that Anakin had returned to the light and saved him in the end, Leia had no such interactions with her father. She knew him for the evil Sith Lord that he was, and remembered him as the man who'd tortured her and then brought her to witness the destruction of her home world. She hated him for a long time, and all these years later, as the novel is set nearly 3 decades after those events, remnants of those feelings persisted, and for good reason. The novel describes Leia's feelings as she reflected on that day, saying, "Sometimes that got her when nothing else did. The troopers had been soldiers of their line. Some of them honestly believed they were doing the right thing. But how could you believe that after you watched a 19-year-old girl writhing on the floor and screaming for mercy that never came? How could you stand there and watch that girl convulse in helpless agony without doing something, anything to help?" Apparently some could. So here, we not only learn just how intense and truly horrifying Vader's interrogation of Leia was, but we also see how that interaction stuck with Leia throughout her life. This is a moment that can sort of be brushed over and possibly forgotten when you're watching the movie because we don't see the specifics of what happened on screen, but it was actually a very intense and important moment which only becomes bigger for Leia when she finally does learn down the road who Vader really was. Her mere recollection of these events in the novel has a big impact on Leia's mental state through that night and into the following morning. But what's also interesting, and ultimately even more tragic about it, is Leia's thoughts about how sharing that story might have prepared her for the future. As she ponders how that conversation with her friend made her feel, Leia finds solace in telling herself that it was good practice for the day she would reveal the reality about Darth Vader to her son. At this time, as many of you know, Ben Solo does not know that he and his family are related to Darth Vader, nor that Darth Vader was once Anakin Skywalker, or that Vader had chose to do good in the end. These were all things that Leia had planned to one day reveal to Ben with the aid of her brother, who would be able to shed some light on the story by describing Anakin's redemption as he experienced it. But Leia had been hesitant to do so to this point. Considering how hard that truth was for her to carry, Leia worried about the impact it would have on her son, and unfortunately, she would never have the chance to tell him herself, as the information would find Ben in the worst way possible and would ultimately play a key role in his fall to the dark side. And so, after years and years of wrestling with that reality and trying to come to terms with it herself, the shadow of her evil father is cast over Leia in a way it had never been before, as she loses her son for what would turn out to be the rest of her life. From the death of her biological mother and her subsequent adoption, to the Empire's reign, to her suffering under Vader's hand, to the loss of her son and her brother and the entire New Republic, the actions of Darth Vader impacted Leia at every stage of her life. And yet, through it all, she persevered. She put one step in front of the other, she fought, she led, and in the end, Leia did save her son. And on that note, I am going to end this video here, so thank you all so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's content, please remember to drop a thumbs up to show your support. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and remember, the Force will be with you always.